Hello Internet! In this video we are going to be making our shield shader actually get shot. So currently this is what we have. It's just a basic shield shader, and then currently we're just creating a bunch of points on this sphere that actually simulate hits. The problem is we aren't actually shooting it. So that's what I'm going to do, or we're going to do now. So I already have created this laser here, and we're going to shoot this at that, and then it's going to act like a normal projectile and actually integrate with this. So before we get to that, I kind of want to just walk through how this is working quickly, in case you aren't totally familiar with it. There's two main parts. This gross part is the shield controller, and that actually assigns the values to the material. So every frame, this shield controller sends over these points to our shield, and then those are what actually get rendered. So these are 4D vectors with an X, Y, and Z position in object space, and then we also have W, which represents the time. And so as the W increases, the circle will expand. And so that's getting set from our shield attack simulator, which this literally just creates a set of points on a random unit sphere. That's all it's doing. So it just creates those points and then does that every set amount of time. So we need to effectively change this shield attack simulator to actually take our impacts and do stuff with that. So that's sort of the part that we need to change. So before we get to that, we actually need to be able to move our projectile, which we can do fairly easily. Let's just create a shield projectile. We have to call it something other than projectile because I've used this project for other things, and one of them happened to be a projectile simulator. We're not going to use it that way, but I'm going to do this. Why was that already there? Oh, right. So I've already tried to record this once, and it didn't go well. So that was from the previous part. I had gotten as far as getting it to move, this projectile to move, and then things went downhill from there. So pretty much the way I got things moving is it's a really simple way to move something. You can take the position and add on the forward vector for whatever object you're using. These are going to be the vectors that point in the direction forward. And then we're going to multiply that by a speed, and we'll also multiply it by the time delta. And then all I need to do is add a public speed, and we'll set that to like 10 initially. We want these to be kind of fast. I know they're lasers, but if we used actual lasers, it'd be really hard to see them. So we're going to use sci-fi lasers, which means they're going to be slower than normal bullets, because I guess that's how that works. So I can just attach this on here, and it should follow our Z-axis. So it should go down our Z, which means it should probably go off that way. Or the other way. Should go that way. Yep. There it goes. So there is our projectile. So what I want to be able to do now is spawn these projectiles. So we want to effectively do our shield attack simulator, but we want to, instead of just creating that, we want to actually spawn these projectiles and shoot them in. So projectile attack simulator. And we can actually reuse a lot of the code that we've already used. So, where was that? Shield attack simulator. If we take this, it's the exact same code, but we're just going to do a few different things. We're not going to keep a list of projectiles anymore. Instead, we're going to have a public game object that's going to be our projectile. We don't need the shield controller anymore or the projectile life. And then radius, shock, cooldown, and timer, those can all be the same. And so what we're effectively going to be doing is creating things in a random point around our center around our shield, and then shooting things in. And so we have this timer. This is going to create a random point. This will be where we spawn it, and then that will actually assign that. So we create the projectile here. Our timer will count up. When it gets above the cooldown, we then spawn a projectile. And so now that we have the point that we actually want to spawn this, we can get our direction, which is going to be quaternion.look. One sec, I have lost IntelliSense, so let me get that back. I just have to restart Visual Studio because reasons. So effectively, the idea here is we're actually going to use the quaternion look at function, which is going to, given two vectors, it's going to put one and look at the other. It's going to take one and make it look in some direction. So the way we can do that is take our quaternion, look at, get IntelliSense, or a responsive Visual Studio would be nice as well. This is going very, very well. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Everything's resizing, and for some reason the entire margin is moving. I don't know what's going on. But we're good now, I guess. Somebody needs to fix that. But what we can do is actually use the negative. Okay, this is getting excessively, what the heck? Bye. I didn't need to see what I was typing. That's weird. But for the direction, we can actually use the negative point. So if I have a sphere, if I'm somewhere on that sphere, the opposite or the negative of that point is going to be the other direction. So if I look at that point, it's going to go through the middle. And so that gets us a point looking right through the middle. So when I spawn all these projectiles, they should all go through the center. They're not going to hit anything because we haven't actually set that up yet. But that's fine. I can delete that. And all we need to do now is instantiate our new projectile at our point with our direction. And so this will spawn our projectile. Our projectile already has the motion set on it, so it should already start moving. We just need to actually set it all up. So I'm actually going to attach this to our shield. This way it should just kind of, I don't know. There's no real reason, I guess. It's just, I don't want to create another object. So, now that we have this, let's do a radius of, say, 20 and a shot cooldown of 0.1. So we'll create 10 bullets per second. And then we can disable this other laser. I'm just going to apply that and we should be good. So now we should spawn a bunch of lasers. And they should all kind of go through the center, which means that's working. And then they'll go off into infinity and eventually our game will crash. Because we spawned way too many of these because they're never going to go away. So the next thing we need to do is actually make these impact our shield. Because they aren't right now. So what we need here is a very basic on hit. Let's not do that. Let's do a yeah, this will be the best way. Let's create a distance. So if I have a distance here, it's going to be equal to the speed times the time delta. That's the total distance our projectile will move in any given frame. So from its origin plus that's the total distance. And then this is just actually the direction it's moving, which means we can use that to actually define our ray. So if I do a ray here, we want a new ray with our origin, which is our current transform position, and then a direction, which is this .transform.forward, So this is just basic projectile stuff. We're just creating a really basic way to do projectile physics. So we're going to track what we hit and then do an if of physics raycast. And we're going to cast our ray with distance, our distance that we're going to travel as the distance for the ray. And then we're going to output that to our hit. And so now that I have this, I think I want to flip these because I always get these confused. There we go. So this will, if we hit something, enter this if statement and store the output of what we hit in that hit variable. So we can then use that and actually do some fun stuff. So I'm going to grab our hit dot collider dot game object dot. I'm trying to think if I can be clever with this. Because the Unity has a way to invoke or send messages. There we go. So if I send a message that says impact, this is going to invoke a function called on projectile hit. And so that's going to invoke that function on this object if it exists. And so we need to actually send over a value, which we can do. So I'm going to send over as an argument the position of our projectile in world space. But we're not going to actually send the projectile. We are going to send the hit point. Yeah. So we're going to send where we hit in world space to whatever object we just hit. And then we're just going to say, you deal with this. It's now your problem. But this, hopefully, should be enough. The only other thing I want to do is destroy it. So we're going to destroy our game object. And that should be enough. If this works, our projectiles should hit that shield and go away. If they're not going away, it's not working. And then we have other things to deal with. Or has no receiver. Because I lied, and that throws an exception if the function doesn't exist. Oh, huh. We can fix that. Send message options don't require receiver. There we go. So there's a third option here, which allows us to give some options like not require receiver. So if we don't have a script on that object that will handle this on projectile hit, then we just ignore it and nothing happens. So we should be able to recompile this. Everything should be good. We can retest this and hopefully this will actually work. And if not, then we'll go back to the drawing board. But I'm kind of hoping that this style works and everything's going right through. Not everything is going through, but some things are. I think our ray is too short, and that's what's causing some of these issues. So we might just have to add a little bias to it, just to make that work a little bit better. But let's see here. Public float projectile bias. And I'm just going to add like 0.25 onto this distance. So we're going to take the distance plus the projectile bias. And that's just going to make the ray a little bit longer so it hits. It has a little bit bigger hit detection. So hopefully it doesn't just phase through things. Because I think that's what was happening there. So hopefully now we'll actually get all of our projectiles hitting. They're all invoking that on projectile hit. So we just need to actually make that do something. And then we can get rid of all of this because none of those make any sense. So let's do that. We have this shield or projectile attack simulator, and we have the shield attack simulator. what we really need to do is get rid of this. We can work with this for now. So instead of doing all of this, which is going to increment our projectiles and actually spawn new ones, we don't need that anymore because we have this onProjectileHit function, which takes a vector3, world space impact. And so that is actually going to be what's hitting it. So this should now get invoked. Just to kind of make sure I'm on the right track, let's just log out the world space impact. So we should no longer see any explosions on that shield because I took out the code that would actually spawn them. What we were intending to do is actually replace that code with this. So instead of actually spawning that, it will hit this code, this will get added to the projectiles, and then everything will just behave like it was. So hopefully we start seeing log messages after it finishes compiling. And I didn't have them enabled. There we go. That would help. There we go. So we're getting all of these projectile things. There's another problem here though. They're in world space coordinates, and this sphere is scaled up 20 times. So we're actually going to need to handle scaling them back down because our actual sphere, the object space sphere that we actually use to draw all of these hits, is going to actually have a radius of 0.5. And so these points need to be in that space, not in this world space. So we need to keep that in mind when we're making this, otherwise it's not going to work. We're not going to see anything. But everything should be fairly straightforward because all I need to do here when a projectile hits it is do projectiles.add, and we're going to add our world space impact. Let's do a new vector3, or vector4, rather, at our world space impact.x, world space impact.y, world space impact.z with a current life of 0. So this code is what is actually handling incrementing our life. So you can see it actually increments life there. So we want to start at 0 and then we'll increment that, and then this would just trim off all of the things that go above 1. So that will actually create a hit, but again, it won't be anything that we see. We need to take this world space impact and multiply it by a few things. We need to get this into object space. And I think I have an idea on how we can do that. We can take our transform WorldToLocalMatrix and multiply our world space impact by that. And so this should account for rotation. We should be able to rotate this the sphere now, and it will still impact in this correct spot. If we didn't do that, it wouldn't work. It should account for rotation, or should account for rotation, scale, and translation, which means we should be able to move that sphere around, and it should still impact at the correct point. Since it's scaled up, that should still work as well, and the rotation should all work. So hopefully this actually works and we get into the correct space. If not, we're not going to see anything. But I should be able to start shooting these, and we can actually see the impacts happening at the points where it's hitting us. So I'm going to slow this down to like 0.5. So we get significantly less projectiles. Why are those stuck there? I think I may have hit it too many times or something. It's still a little bit buggy. If you go over the 50 limit we have, it doesn't work as well. So I think that might have been what happened. But now we have all of it that's a little bit slower. So what I should be able to do is rotate this. And you can see the impacts on the sphere. Those move. But the impacts that are hitting it now are happening at the correct position, which means that we're actually accounting for rotation. We're actually getting it in the proper space. If we didn't do that, if we just like divided it by the scale or something, these rotations wouldn't be correct. As soon as we rotated that, then it would be incorrect. You'd be off by however much you rotated it. So this is actually correctly accounting for that, and we should be able to move it as well. And we're getting it in the same spot. So everything seems to be working. We seem to be able to actually shoot this now and actually have it react how you would expect, which means we effectively have an actual shield at this point. So that's cool. The next thing we need to do is actually add some more, use this refraction shader that we have, because we have it, it's just not really doing what we want it to. It's just a really complicated way to do nothing. So we're going to improve that, make that better, but that's coming in another video. So this is sort of what I wanted to get done. Kind of gets to the point where we can actually shoot, does some message stuff, and everything works. So yeah, hopefully you guys are following along. Hopefully it's making sense. If not, let me know in the comments and we can go back and cover some other stuff. But yeah, that's it for this video. So till next time, see you, internet.